Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. So namaste everyone. This is the sixth episode of Samvadaha. And once again, it's BG who's with us. We'll be discussing psychology in the light of Vedanta with a special emphasis on Ishvara as the intelligent cause. So BG, please take it away.
Okay. Now we're gonna what we're going to look at today is that when we look at human life, fundamentally, a completely continual recurring theme is we find ourselves being in resistance, a sense of opposition or fighting against either ourselves, other people, or what's happening in the world. For example, what's happening politically in America. There's a lot of, but what happens is, forgetting about what's actually happening, what happens is the resistance to what is happening or to what is centered on me. I become a resistor. And this is, you could actually say that in terms of all forms of human suffering, this is the common denominator. You see, if I was enjoying depression, if I was in a state of depression and I'm saying, wow, it's okay. If there was no resistance, there would be no problem, but it's not. When I feel depressed, I go see someone, I go, I can't stand being what I can't stand with being what I'm like. So this resistance, which is an opposition like this, and when we are being resisting, what chance do you think there is of harmony or of being harmonious or peaceful within myself?
Very little.
Now, so, and when we examine our life in the light of that, we can say that basically human psychology, what Swami Dayananda called the personality, the built-in reactions, that he said that the basis of reaction, and what he meant by reaction was not just, he wasn't meaning having a psychological reaction, he meant by dramatizing, being reactive, always involves resistance, because he says that he had this beautiful principle. It's just such a beautiful, when I first heard it, I thought, it can't be that simple, can't be that simple. It's just, the basis of reaction is non-acceptance of a fact. The basis of reaction. And this reactiveness is me being resisting. Now, for example, when you get upset with someone, have you noticed that you are in a state of resisting, and that resisting is centered on you?
Yes.
I'm the one resisting the object. Now, this is where what he talks about is like the Copernican revolution when it comes to psychology. Everybody believes that the problem exists with the object that I'm resisting. Okay, so everyone says is that my problem is the depression I'm having, that's the object, and me resisting the depression. But I think that if I can get rid of the object, then I'll be happy. What I don't see is that the problem is centered on me as I am being resisting. I'm actually enclosed in resisting against. Isn't that interesting? So everybody believes that if I can control the object, okay, then if by controlling the object, I can then get rid of the resistance. So if I can change my spouse, I'll be fine. If I can change the world, I will be fine. If I can change the psychological reactions that I'm having, I'm going to be okay. So I spend my entire life, and by the way, this was the story of my life until I met Swami Dayananda, by the way. But I genuinely and sincerely believed that my problems was the object that I was facing. I didn't see the fact of being resisting, being a resistor, not having resistance, but being a resistor. Are we clear on that?
Yes.
Okay. And so we know Vedanta 101 is that we have this fundamental problem, is that we believe that we have a life and being that is separate from God, that's set apart from God.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Vedantic vision that Vedanta outlines is there is only God. So, you know, there's in juxtaposition, we have these two things. Now, Vedanta is a journey going from this isolated, unhappy, where I take my life and being to be my thoughts, my feelings, my sensations, and my actions. It's a movement into the vision, there is only God.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a movement in time, you know, from here to there. Okay? Everyone thinks, because in functional living, we think I'm here, and what I'm doing is I'm going to do certain things like this, work hard, and I'm going to arrive at a point. Now, that's very important in functional life, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But Vedanta is a journey by the means of knowledge. Mm-hmm. In other words, we're talking about a way of seeing, obtaining in me. But what Swami Dayananda means by knowledge is it's not knowing about. Like if I am being peaceful, what happens to the resistor? Myself as a resistor.
It fades away.
And not only that, Swami Dayananda said a very interesting thing, which we don't have anything in the West like this. He says, Vedanta is you. In other words, Vedanta is what you are being. So when I am being peaceful, that's what I am being. Mm-hmm. But the difference is the basis of that being peaceful is a way of seeing. So when I am being the way of seeing, this is what he means by Vedanta is you. It's not away from me. So this transformation through knowledge, movement from being an isolated, cut off, angry, empty, lonely human being, mm-hmm. and my sense of identity as a separate entity. This movement from that way of seeing myself, which results in a way of being, by the way, a movement from that into this vision that there is only God. What happens then, of course, is that I am freed from ignorance. But it's a journey. Now he says a very interesting thing. It's a journey without distance. Okay. It's a journey without distance. So it doesn't involve time. So it's always right here, right now, as I am. I can be under the sway of the vision of the teaching, and I can be living that vision, or I'm not. Okay. Now, so just so we're tracking. So when we come, and what's great about Swami Dayananda, he didn't see this as a kind of an inward process. You know, like Westerners when they think about spirituality, they kind of think there's this inward thing going to happen, and I'm going to arrive or something. You know, like
experience
it's really quite weird. Sorry?
Experience.
I'm going to experience something away from myself, and not only that, it's kind of like I'm going to have something in myself. But for Swami Dayananda, he says you have to take into account everything. And so what happens is, at any one time, I'm always facing the universe, aren't I? Okay, I'm the functioning of the universe. So what happens is, so what he unfolds he doesn't unfold a cosmology for the sake of cosmology. Cosmology is the study of the cosmos. What he does is he unfolds a vision of the universe that frees us from friction. So a vision that when we're abiding in it, so if I'm abiding in his vision, right here, right now as I am, I cease to be a resistor. This is the whole point. So he wasn't into teaching another cosmology. So, and it's very important, particularly Western people. We're not, otherwise we'll just take, we'll take what he says as a philosophy or as a religion. But that's not his interest. His interest was always, what does it mean to be free while living? So while living this life, what does it mean to be free? So what we're going to look at is a vision that encompasses every single aspect of your life. It's the most extraordinary thing. And what we're going to find is that in his vision, the whole point is that when I'm looking, I'm always looking at something, right? And always something in front of me. I'm always facing the world that's in front of me. And in Latin, the word presence, do you know what that means in Latin, the word presence? Pres means in front of, esse means existing. What's existing in front of me? So the presence of the universe is always in front of me in a particular form. Okay? Now, so it's very important that if you could think of what's one of the most important, what am I looking at? What am I looking at? Now, we get caught up in various things, but his vision unfolds what we are always looking at any one moment. And what he would see it as is this: at any one moment, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at a functioning universe, which is functioning perfectly in keeping with the intelligent arrangement it is. Always. So what I'm looking at, it doesn't matter what's happening. This is inviolate. You're always looking at this functioning universe, which is functioning in perfect conformity with the intelligent arrangement it is. This is never, and we're going to go into what this means, but this is truly extraordinary because he's not saying that what's happening is perfect. He's saying it's perfectly in keeping with the order, with the intelligent arrangement. So given that I am cut off from the light that is God, I must be by necessity enclosed in darkness. It's not God punishing me, it's just the way it works. It's just the law. It's what Aristotle called necessary, something that cannot not be. If I am caught up and enclosed in a wrong notion of what I am, I cannot help but suffer. I'm not being punished. This is just simply the result of laws, because the Hindus don't have this punishing God business. We suffer from that melody. Okay, now, so what we're going to look at is what we mean by an intelligent arrangement. All right, so, and this is in our Western tradition, we had the early Greeks and the Stoics were very interested in order. You see what I mean? Where they called that was their word. They were interested in this order, and Heraclitus called it the logos. Right? They were very interested in this, and they were very interested in that they saw this intelligent order in the universe, and they saw this intelligent order within themselves. And some of the Stoics were seeking to be in harmony with this intelligent principle as it existed in them.
Right.
And I never really understood the Stoics until I come across Dionanda, actually, but because he solves it quite well. So let's start from the beginning.
Mhm.
Let's imagine that you on a table in front of you, you've got a whole heap of matches.
Okay.
They're just a heap, just a random, unordered heap.
Mhm.
Now, what happens is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now line them all up in a row. You see, I'm lining it all up a row. Now, suddenly, out of a heap, what I now have is an intelligent arrangement, don't I?
Yes.
And I can't see the intelligent arrangement with my senses. It's something I can appreciate with my intellect, isn't it?
Mhm.
Because the intellect also is that the organ is it is the it can actually perceive order.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
You know, I never thought about it that way, because your senses only taken the input, but it is your intellect that tells you what it is, which is an ordered system. And
Yeah,
that's a very novel way to look at it. So,
yeah. That's and so that the faculty of the intellect, it's a the senses only show you color and form,
right.
but this knowing faculty, do you know what I mean, can penetrate through the senses and actually see the nature of things.
Yes.
Does that make sense? In the old days, in our Western tradition, we used to make a distinction between intellectus and ratio.
Hmm.
Right now, but what happened after the Enlightenment, rationation, thinking and reasoning and all of that stuff was made the king.
Hmm.
So this faculty that could just see, do you know what I mean, could just recognize, which Vedanta uses because this is the faculty that can understand the teaching. But what happens is that you just immediately can see order. You can see and appreciate that there's an intelligent arrangement.
Yes.
It just doesn't just happen by it's not a constituent of matter. So it's not a disorganized heap. What happens is there is this intelligent arrangement. Okay? Now, Aristotle called order, he called it the disposition of many in relation to one, which is a good definition. It's sort of like it's complicated, but it's the old-fashioned language. But it's again, the disposition of that are all lined up for one, in the row, aren't they?
Yes.
They're ordered to a one thing, right? St. Thomas Aquinas, he was also and he talked about an arrangement of parts directed towards an end.
So this is teleology, right?
Sorry?
This is referring to teleology?
Yeah, that's right. But they understood teleology, but they understood there was order.
Mm.
They were very, very impressed with order, right? But after the Enlightenment, that all went away. But the thing is, and Swami Dayananda says, about the creation, if you had a soup, an alphabet soup, and the things were banging together, he says, what chance would it be that this alphabet soup would arrange itself into a meaningful sentence? He said nothing. It's just not it's not possible, right? So now let's just look at it. So, but I found his definition of order and the intelligent arrangement, I found that very just simple, clear, and it really was very clarifying. Okay, so when we're looking at, let's say we take a bit more complicated. Let's have a look at a car engine.
Mm-hmm.
You've got an intelligent arrangement of parts, but they're all working together. So you've got this dynamic arrangement of parts that are working together, perfectly in keeping with the intelligent. So you've got this functioning, this ongoing functioning, which everything is working together, perfectly in keeping with the intelligent arrangement it is.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting? Right? Now, Dayananda goes even further. When you're looking at this universe, you are always looking at the presence of God in the form of a functioning order which is perfectly in keeping with the intelligent arrangement it is. This is what you're always looking at. This is what's happening can be in no other way. Now, but then we get the psychological resistance to this fact because we like to control everything. You know, I told you as a resistor, I want to control my wife. I want to control my thoughts and feelings. I want to control events. Okay. And one of the most frightening most frightening things for human being is the acknowledgement of their helplessness.
Right.
It's just, that's why, in the West we have a thing, there's a phenomena called a book called The Secret. I don't know whether you've ever seen it.
Yes, horrible.
Okay, now this promises that it gives you control. Okay, that I am God basically, and I can just, determine the shape and size, how the universe is, right? Yeah. This is, in course, and completely mad, but it might give for a while a certain solace in the sense that I'm not helpless.
Right.
Okay, but the fact of the matter is, you see, Swami Dayananda has another principle too, which is very interesting. Everything is given. Get this? He doesn't go, some things are given. And I learned something about Dayananda. You take him literally.
Yes.
It might seem weird, a lot of what he used to say I found weird at the beginning, particularly, there's only God. That was really weird. But anyway, so everything is given. So now I want to explain this in terms of why this is so important to understand and its relationship to what he calls self-acceptance. Mm-hmm. Because you know how he said, the basis of self-acceptance is our understanding of Ishvara.
Right.
Now, it's a very interesting thing. The basis of not me accepting myself. This is nonsense. The basis of self-acceptance is me understanding Ishvara. Now, I just want to clarify one thing. He's not saying that God causes war. He's not saying that God is causing a young child to die of cancer. What he's saying is that everything that is existing, that has reality, is that we never, no matter how far away we get from God in terms of ignorance, that the order is God, but God isn't the order. God doesn't become, the water does not become a wave, but everything is dependent on water for its existence. It's what we in the West call contingent existence. It's dependent existence. For anything to have any reality, so any form that we see in terms of the waves, rough waves, smooth waves, ugly waves, doesn't matter. It basically, for it to have any existence, it depends on God. Right. And so that, to that degree, it is a manifestation of God. It's not God causing horrible things. However, the presence of God is away from nothing we're looking at, which is actually a very, very important consoling insight. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But it's not, but because of the presence of God, no matter how far away we are, and in the world of samsara, we're a long way away, everything unfolds according to the intelligent arrangement that this universe is. Yes. And we can take this to the bank. God does not play dice, right? But it's not like the Western Judaic Christian thing that God creates a universe and then it's separate from God and it exists somehow by itself. It's not like that. Okay, so what happens is, what's important is that what I'm looking at any one time is the presence of God in the form of a functioning universe, which is perfectly in keeping with the intelligent arrangement it is. You can abide in this vision facing every experience that you're looking at. Okay, it's not. It's total. It's not like it's a vision I'll have for that and that and that. All right. Now, how many people do you know that sometimes condemn themselves because of the psychological reactions that occur in them?
Quite a lot, and I do it myself.
Right. Now that's what I want to cover, because it's extremely liberated me from useless self-condemnation. Okay, because I always thought that I had my mind and in my mind were these various problems that I couldn't resolve or struggle with, and I felt there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Okay, now Swami Dayananda is, and because normally what happens, we go in, there's in ourselves, and then and then there's the universe outside ourselves. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is very interesting. For Swami Dayananda, the universe that we're looking at also includes the thoughts and feelings I'm having. Can you believe that? So that this functioning universe that I am looking at, which is given, includes my thoughts and feelings. Now, that means that I haven't really got my mind. We can talk about my mind, but what I'm doing is that when we're looking at life, we notice that there are appearances coming and going. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when I look at the weather, have I got any control over the weather?
No.
But is it working according to meteorological laws?
Yes.
Now, I don't know the laws. I just know there's regularity. Just like the arrangement, the intelligent arrangement of the matches, I can appreciate the fact that it's working according to principles and laws.
Yes.
Right? So even the way the weather works, this intelligent arrangement is being made manifest, isn't it? And it's perfectly in keeping with the intelligent arrangement it is. Can't help it. But what happens is what happens is, let's say, for example, your wife says something that you don't like. Does she ever do that, by the way?
Occasionally, not often, but
Yes.
occasionally.
Yeah. So when people say and do things that we don't like, what happens is, what is completely and utterly lawful is there is always, mainly, a reaction of liking or disliking. And we're not going into this crazy thing of, I shouldn't be liking and disliking, I'm going to get rid of it through, becoming blissful and spiritual. Liking and disliking is normal, will exist for you for the rest of your life, and it's actually very important, because we like things that are helpful and we don't like things, so it helps us negotiate our life. So we're not talking about that nonsense. But the fact of the matter is that I have got a built-in psychological content. Is that true? Right. So if I say to you, if you imagine a spade and I'm scraping the concrete,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel it?
It's grating sound, yeah.
And you can feel it. It's big, and you're feeling it. Even today, your body is shivering.
Right.
Now, so we have this built-in content that can be triggered, and it is triggered all the time. Okay, and the thing is that we have experiences of pain and suffering and being treated badly. Every experience that we've had is built in, and these experiences, in terms of feelings and thoughts, come into operation continuously.
Right.
Okay, according to laws. We don't know the laws, right? But we are not responsible for that. We are only responsible for action. Now, there are some people who disagree with this because they go, oh, but the fact of the matter is, this is the fact. Because if I say to you, what's your name? What happens to you? Yeah. Does it choicelessly arise?
Right.
Okay, so what happens is, due to the fact that I've got past experiences. So when I'm looking at something, the reactions I'm having, so there's what you're looking at, that's the given, and also the psychological reactions that arise in you in relation to that. That's all the given. That's the presence of that's what Swami Dayananda calls the presence of the given. That's given. Now, there's a difference between having a reaction and being the reaction. Now, for Swami Dayananda, now this is where he's different from Western psychologists. Western psychologists get obsessed about psychological reactions. They even think, of course, that the reactions are the problem. They believe that. And then they have all these type of therapies that meddle with people's heads. Okay? But for Swami Dayananda, the reaction of anger is happening according to laws. The problem is when I become when I am being the anger, when my sense of identity, my life and being, and the anger become confused, poured together. Remember we talked last time that confused means together, poured. When there's a confusion centered on self, when I become, he puts it this way, when you become the thinking and the thinking becomes you, right? That's what he thinks the problem is. He doesn't think the problem is having psychological reactions. It's when we become the psychological reaction, because once we are being the reaction, lawfully, we can't help but dramatize. We can't help but dramatize it. We will live it out. That's the laws. But the first thing that we have to understand is that when I'm sitting here right now as I am, right? This is the result of laws. The actual condition I'm in at any one moment, I find, I might find it objectionable. But the fact of the matter is, it is just here, and it is what it is. Now, I'm a fairly uptight guy. I could never just sit quietly with myself for half an hour. I have no problem now. Because if, for example, once you understand this, let's say, for example, I'm sitting here and I'm agitated. Well, that's just the fact. Now, for Swami Dayananda, his whole thing is you're only living when you're alive to fact. So if I'm sitting here and I'm agitated, what's the fact?
That there is agitation taking place.
Yes. Now imagine, so if I'm remaining with myself without resistance, with that agitation, is there a problem?
No.
No, because I'm not being a resistor, am I? And you see, this understanding of life enables you to be what they consider extremely important in the Gita psychology, a thing called graceful acceptance. Because it's only through graceful acceptance can we remain the same in the face of changing events.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Because changing circumstances are occurring all the time. That's the changing. But did you notice he said the practice of yoga is what? Sameness. Sameness. Now, this is extraordinarily important in terms of psychological freedom. If I don't know what it means to remain the same in the face of changing circumstances, I am not free. I will become reactive. It's not that I'm having reactions, right? Now, so he gave a book called Morning Meditations, where he took the prayer of St. Francis de Sales, which was, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, and the strength and will to change the things I can change, and the wisdom to know the difference. He loved that prayer from our Western tradition. Now, he was an extraordinary man, that saint that said that prayer, but and psychologically very smart. But the thing is that it's extremely important to see what is in our control and what is not. Does that make sense, Prashant?
Yes.
And the thing that, when if people are clinicians or psychotherapists or counselors, people become self-hating over their reactions. They get anxious about their anxiousness, they get angry about their anger, and they get depressed about their depression. Right? Now, and that causes another problem. But for Swami Dayananda, the whole point, you see, is that when I am being accepting, I am released from resistance.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm released from resistance, I'm no longer caught in reaction, because the basis of reaction is non-acceptance of fact. This acceptance puts me in the world as it is. So that's the first part of Karma Yoga, is the graceful acceptance is the basis of responsiveness.
Yes.
Living a life of Dharma keeps me in harmony of what is.
Okay.
They're two coins of the same thing. We need both. Without acceptance, you can't live a dharmic life because you're not conscious.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very important thing. And I'm not talking about like this Buddhist mindfulness business. I'm not talking about that. That annoys the hell out of me. But the thing is that what we're talking about is that right here, right now, as I am, if I understand, okay, I am feeling as I'm feeling. Do you notice that if I can just remain with it, and I can remain with, because I understand that that's out of my hands.
Yes.
So if I remain with myself quietly as I am, here I am, I'm just agitated, but I'm just being with myself as agitated. I don't care, because it's the functioning of the universe. It's not me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the functioning of the universe. So I'm going to come into an intimate relationship with that functioning without friction. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. So I have a question over here. So just want to step back a little.
Yep.
You mentioned you're not a huge fan of mindfulness.
No.
So can you explain the differences between Vedanta and what mindfulness proposes for myself?
The thing is that we don't do awareness. We don't do being. It's just here.
Okay.
So when we're trying to do awareness, right? The light of awareness. Is it an attribute of me? Is it something I have? No. Or is it just here?
No, it's myself.
Yes, but in the sense that it's not myself as personality, it's just here.
Right.
And when I am seeing through it, I am different. I'm being when I'm seeing through the light of awareness, my being is different, isn't it?
Right.
But and so when I am simply being myself, because Chit and because Sat is Chit, I find myself being aware and I find myself being full. I don't manufacture it.
Right.
I'm living an understanding of what I am.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference we see. For Dayananda, it's two things. You first of all awake into a meaning of what does it mean to be myself. Mm-hmm. Then I live that understanding. Mm-hmm. Now, the forerunner of when we're dealing with the Gita psychology, it's myself as a conscious person. I'm aware of. Okay, we're not talking about God in itself. That's the Upanishadics deal with that. Does that make sense? But myself as an individual, I need to come into harmony with Ishvara. In other words, the wave, the ocean can come into the range of human cognition for the wave. Okay, so I come into relationship with Ishvara, right? I'm not talking, and for Swami Dayananda says you can't bypass Ishvara. Okay. So I have to, as an individual, I have to be harmonious. Hmm. But being harmonious is a relationship to Ishvara. So when I am with Ishvara as he is, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That means when I'm agitated like this, I remain quietly with myself. I am being with God. Okay, it's communion. It's not knowing God in itself. Swami Dayananda makes a very interesting distinction between me being aware of and being awareness in itself. Now, I leave that up to the Vedanta teachers to deal with that. I don't.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about the preliminary necessity of learning to live this freedom, psychological freedom, which is the absolute freedom in relative form.
Right.
So you know how they say that if awareness is abidingly present, it's unchanging and everything is changing. Well,
Right.
if I don't understand what it means to remain the same in the face of changing circumstances, I won't even know what that means. Mm-hmm. Like Swami Dayananda said a very interesting thing. If you cannot accommodate people totally, you will never understand Vedanta. And he didn't say some people. He meant you can't just simply go, well, I'll accept my friends. No. If you do not learn how to remain the same, how to remain accepting in the face of changing circumstances, pleasant, unpleasant, because in this acceptance, it embraces the pleasant and unpleasant. You are not going to understand Vedanta because you're not psychologically free. It's only this sameness. But in order this understanding, this graceful acceptance is born out of our understanding of God. Very interesting point, because he said a very interesting thing. He says it's when he take us through this meditations, right? And he said a very interesting thing. When you are accepting what is, you find yourself being acceptable. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm going to accept myself. You've seen this one, I'm going to accept myself. I'm my own person. You know, this modern psychological pop psychology nonsense, right?
Yes.
So at any one moment, here I am, I'm sitting here with myself, I'm agitated, and I go, and I shift into the vision. What's happening is, because I am accepting what is, I suddenly find myself being acceptable because I'm lifted out of being a resistor.
Right.
Now, many times when he'd take people through meditations, I was very interested in his process. Does that make sense? The form that the meditation would take, but the structure was always the same. First of all, you'd relax the body, you then go into acceptance, then you go into consciousness. There's always that.
Yes.
Always. Didn't matter what you do. So it was a journey without distance. You'd say, okay, it was sitting there. Yeah. So you weren't trying to get away from yourself. You were not trying to arrive at some future event called moksha or any of that nonsense, right? Because it's a journey without distance. So you'd start, okay, you'd come with yourself and you start to relax and stuff like that. So, whatever. And then you'd start to go, okay, that, your parents, they can't help but be what they are and you can't be able. So he'd just bring you into this thing that, everything is just perfectly in keep. And I remember once he said something, I was sitting in another chair, I remember it. And he said this, and it's when it arrived at me, he said, everything is perfectly in place. And I don't know what happened. I just suddenly, from that point on, I don't know, I understood the fact that given what is, nothing can be any different. So I'm not responsible for that, but I am responsible. See, what's also given is I have choice over action.
Right.
Alone. But we don't like that because in one sense, it means abdication of trying to control. Do you see what I mean? So, for example, psychologically, we all have a little bit of because of our self-dissatisfaction, we have an idealized vision of ourselves, right? I'm being a nice and sweet person, right? Now, if I suddenly feel extremely hostile and vicious or whatever, instead of just simply remaining the same in Ishvar's lap in the face of that upset, do you mean that intense hostility? Or I'll go, oh, I don't like that, and I'll resist it because it goes against my noble pictures of myself. Now, that's the other thing. Swami Narayananda never wanted you to improve yourself.
Mm.
He only wanted you to improve your conduct.
Right. True.
Now, that's very important, because in the West, we're obsessed with self-improvement. There's no self-improvement. Self-improvement is impossible. Do you know what I mean? But can I improve my conduct?
Hmm.
Yes. You know, I can make it more. I can be non-harmful. I can be beneficially contributive, and I can be non-disturbing, can't I? I can learn to do that. Now, that's the other thing. When my way of being in the world conforms to Dharma, like what I'm saying, because the intrinsic, this intelligent principle that the Stoics were so interested in, right? You know how Swami Dayananda says that Ishvara manifests as Dharma in our life?
Mm.
You see, when I want to see, for Dayananda, acceptance is being loving. Did you know that?
True.
It's a synonym for love. He didn't have this, it's not this lovey-dovey stuff. He wasn't interested in that, right? So when I'm with myself and I'm angry and frustrated, right? Now, normally people say, oh, that's not very nice. You're angry and frustrated. I wish, you've got to do something about that. No, because that's not to do with so what I do is, if I remain loving, that means being accepting. In love, that hostility will be resolved.
Right.
That's what he means by resolving the ego into Ishvara. He said, without this, so the great thing is that we can come to God as we are with this understanding.
Yes, very beautiful.
Because we can, if we're angry and frustrated, I just come to God as an angry, frustrated person, and I leave myself in his hands.
Mm.
And if you do that, there's a release because you're not resisting. You can't do that. There's no such thing as acceptance without understanding what God is. This is ridiculous. It's just not possible.
Mm.
So I can in the mornings, which I do, I sit with myself.
Mm.
You know how he said that the supreme action is, bringing your mind to yourself and thinking no other thing. That was the instruction of the Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Bring your mind to yourself and think of no other thing. And Dayananda called this the supreme action. So what happens is coming back to yourself and remaining with yourself as is. Do you know what I mean? This is extreme, but because then you're just simply being. But you won't do that without this understanding of acceptance. This is not open to you.
Correct.
If I object to the fact that I'm frustrated or angry, for example, or I feel lonely or I feel empty or any of this stuff, as soon as I become resisting, what happens? You get that dualism of resistor resisted. You get psychological conflict. But once I understand, now he's not saying, because he says you don't have to like what's happening, you don't have to agree with what's happening, but given the geopolitical situation in America at the moment, it can't help but be the way it is.
Correct.
Now, that doesn't mean to say that you like it. He says it's quite in order that even if you don't like it, that's in order too.
Right.
You see what I mean? If I'm resisting it, I accept the fact I'm resisting it.
Right.
I accept that too, because with this vision is like it includes everything. So I don't have to worry about myself. Now, I do have to worry about or be concerned about conduct.
Yes.
Because when I am being loving, have you noticed that when you're being accepting, to the degree you fall away from that, you become hateful? Have you noticed?
Yes.
That's just a fact.
Right.
And so I know when I look at the world politicians, I know that their problem is my problem.
Right.
I mean, in terms of, our egos, we love to think that we're different from other people, and we can virtue signal, oh, how dare they be like this, But the fact of the matter is, what I'm looking at, I know that like me, when I fall away from love, that being accepting, to that degree I become hostile. And Dayananda says that the dynamic form of the basic person is love. So we actually have a Dharma is a striving inside that to be in harmony. I also know, he says that the dynamic form of the basic person is love and care. Have you noticed that when you cease to be caring, you become ruthless to that degree?
True, yes.
Now, when you look at the terrible things that happen in our world, it always boils down to hatred and ruthlessness in the human heart. It's only when we're in harmony with God are we released from ruthlessness and hatred.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what type of innocent face we present to the world. This is just the way it is. And for the Hindus, we're not talking about some inward spiritual state. We're talking about a lifestyle of Dharma. I think they call it Sanatana Dharma, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what we're looking at is that this vision of God produces a way of being in the world in which is loving and caring, or free from hatred and ruthlessness. It's very, very important, this. But again, so what the release is this. Everybody, even though, because we're social beings, of course, we present a persona. And Dr. Jung's right, we need a persona. Do you know what I mean? It's a face we put on. But the thing is that everybody has all sorts of psychological reactions that are, in inverted commas, socially unacceptable. Everybody. Now, what's important here is complete acceptance of this. If I become enraged, or I have impulses that are unsocial, but they're only reactions. They're not good or bad. For Swami Dayananda, they're not good or right or wrong. Right and wrong only applies to action. So why this is important is that it enables me to accept myself, because it's the functioning of the psychological laws. I can't hear you, Prashant.
Oh,
You're
sorry,
on
I was
mute.
muted.
Yep.
So I just wanted to pause on this point for a second.
Yep.
So let's say I accept my reactions for what they are. It's
Yep.
part of the order. I don't have control over the reactions. I have control over my deliberate actions. But
Yep. You've got control of action. You've got choice over action. Yep.
But if a person does not reflect upon their reactions, how do you cease to have them, continue on?
Well, this is the laws also. If I'm not alive to my reactions, I will become them. So you know how Swami Dayananda says that the purpose of life is to live, but you're not living unless you're alive to facts.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm alive to facts, I'm actually rooted in the light of awareness, aren't I?
Right.
When I'm not alive to facts, I will mindlessly dramatize. That's a rule.
Right.
So we're not. So what we're saying is that's why it's so important to what they say: live in Ishvara's world.
Mm.
If I'm alive to facts because it's there, I see it. If I'm not alive to facts because I see it, it's there. Then I'm caught up in subjectivity.
Right.
Right. So that's a rule. So what we're learning to do in Karma Yoga is we're learning to live in Ishvara's world, to live with God.
Yes.
Instead of being full of ourselves.
True.
But the interesting point is this, is aliveness to facts is not necessarily the default position of human beings. Mm. And it's only when we're filled with the light. You see, for Vedanta 101, and I put it in the English vernacular, instead of saying Satchitananda, I say life, light, and fullness. Mm-hmm. the light, life, and fullness that is God is abidingly present.
Right.
It enters my life as awareness, doesn't it? The light of awareness. God enters my life as the light of awareness. It's given, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's not my awareness. See, for Vedanta, you don't have awareness. Do you know what I mean? It's not away from you.
Mm-hmm.
So when we come into contact with God, we literally become the awareness from our side of the fence.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So, but it's not our usual position. Do you know what I mean? Normally, human beings are not aware. They're enclosed in subjectivity. That's so we're learning to live in Ishvara's world, and this is the whole. This is what he defined. This he called the yoga of objectivity.
Mm.
You're full of objects. You see what I mean? So you're full of the presence of reality as it is given, the living presence of the given.
Mm.
Do you see what I mean? So it's a very important thing to understand this, because this is the law. When I am being objective, I'm freed from resistance.
Yes.
When I'm being subjective, I'm in resistance. Do you see what I mean? So this understanding that this enables me that, okay, I'm helpless in terms of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not helpless in terms of my response to what's happening. But even then, he says, often what we do, our best efforts will not work. Now, this is also where this is a fact to be accepted. This is just simply the way the world works. So he was extremely realistic, Swami Dayananda. When I was talking to him once, and he says, we are reality people.
Yes.
He wasn't into denial. He wasn't into spiritual la-la land. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So to sort of sum up, let's say no matter what so my life happens one moment at a time, right?
Right.
And so right here, right now, as I am, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a certain condition.
Mm-hmm.
Certain things are happening. When I am being accepting, because I understand it, because I'm always facing the presence of God in the form of a functioning universe, which is perfectly in keeping with the intelligent arrangement it is. This vision, when I'm abiding in that vision, I lose sight of the vision, of course, but then I come back.
Mm-hmm.
This enables me to be gracefully accepting. Doesn't mean liking, it just means that I'm in harmony with what is. So even if I'm in pain, now I saw Swami Dayananda in sometimes intense pain, because he was dying and he was in intense pain. But he was rooted in himself. He had this kind of relaxation in the face of it.
Yes.
Because he was rooted in God. Do you see what I mean? So this once we understand that it is not possible to be self-accepting unless you accept what is. He, like what he said, if you accept what's in front of you, you become acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
You're being the accepting. I remember he says, Vedanta is you. Being accepting isn't like I have acceptance. I am being accepting, because for him, Vedanta is you.
Yes.
So when he talks about a knowledge, he's not talking about a dualistic knowledge. I know that. He's talking about being the knowing. Being the knowing. And this is very important. And it changed my life psychologically, because I now know that I can rest in the lap of Ishvara in the face of whatever is happening, and I don't get upset about it. I just don't care. When I'm sitting with myself and my mind's racing, do I think, oh, I've got to calm my mind and make it still? No, I don't even bother to do with it. I just remain with myself. And by remaining with myself without resistance, I find myself being alive to facts, and then I find myself calming down anyway.
Right.
But that's just a lawful consequence. We can rely on the laws. Do you know what I mean? We can. In our Western tradition, I'll finish off with this. There's a saying by Francis Bacon. You ever heard of Francis Bacon?
Yes.
He says, we command the laws by obeying them. Isn't that an amazing thing?
Yeah.
Command the laws by obeying them.
Yeah.
So we work with the laws. And so even with karma yoga, the more I learn to abide in this accepting in the face of changing experiences, the more harmonious and peaceful I will come within myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a law. I can rely on that. The more I get enclosed in resisting and fighting and struggling and trying to change things I can't change, the more agitated my life will be. That's also the thing. So have you got any comments to make? That
I have a question. So let's say, we have to sometimes remind ourselves to be objective, and then the mind finds itself relatively calm thereafter. How do you stop yourself from going down a path of neurotic thinking where you're not able to come to grips with objectivity because you are so far out already?
Okay. Now again, Swami Dayananda, have you ever heard him use the terms highlighting?
Oh, yes, you used it last time. Yes.
Okay. And he said that nididhyasanam is actually seeing what the teacher was showing you without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is, here I am. You see, again, it's a growth thing. The more we practice this, the more it'll come back. Okay, so the more I ponder the teaching, the more, what I mean by that is live the teaching. So I notice that I'm upset. So first of all, don't try and deal with the upset as an object.
Mm-hmm.
Be aware of the fact I'm resisting. I'm resisting, right? So what I do is straight away, if I, for example, okay, I'll physically relax. I'm just going to physically relax. Right now, this is the entrance point in his meditations, because when I'm just simply relaxing, see, for me to be agitated, it's involved tense muscles and all of this stuff. So the doorway, if I just simply relax my jaw, just feel my bum on the seat, just feel the natural weight of my feet on the ground. I'm not trying to control anything, but I'm shifting out of the reaction. Does that make sense? The reactivity.
Yes.
Does that make sense? So we can go into this actually next time more, but so I'm shifting out of the reactivity. So I'm because if I'm agitated, I'm like this, right? Whereas if I relax physically, what happens is the agitation can't help but subside a bit.
Correct.
You with me? So the important point is don't try and control myself. You know how when he talks about living the understanding, we use the understanding to control it in a sense, right? So the moment it comes to me, hey, Bede, you're being reactive. That's the presence of Ishvara, of light of understanding, obtaining in you, saying, watch it, you're getting lost. Thank God for that. So even seeing that you're being a real jerk is a very good thing. Do you see what I mean? It's very good because how it pulls you up, and then what you can do is that you then can turn to God and you just place yourself in His lap and you remain with yourself as you are. You might relax the muscles, whatever. And the thing is that you will then find, it's a question of you either take refuge in God or you try and change and manage the world. Well, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And the more we take refuge in God, or what he calls being relaxed in Ishvara's lap, the more we'll find that we'll go down. So, but the important thing is that if you just try this for this next week,
have
a look at every time, use it as a red flag. You know that feeling of pushing against? It's this understanding that the problem is centered on me. I'm being a resistor. Now, if I understand that if I suddenly cease to be a resistor, what I found remarkable is this. I might be in an altercation with someone and I think they're a real SOB, right? Mm-hmm. And then, but the moment I see it, I go, and then I stop, I then kind of relax and I just remain with myself. Suddenly, I cease to be a resistor, but guess what happens to the SOB? They disappear that too, as well. Yeah. I'm no longer seeing people as enemies and friends. Does that make sense? That's right. Subjective. So it's this understanding, because Swami Dayananda, emotional maturity, the beginning of it is understanding that it's located with me. That's the beginning point. So that, because while I still blame, I'm going to be helpless, because if I blame, I can't help but try to change you. Does that make sense?
That's true.
So it's the release from. So again, it depends on understanding and knowledge. In Vedanta, we're transformed through understanding. Do you see what I mean? So this understanding that me as a resistor is the problem is kind of like the beginning point, but also understanding that the presence of God is away from nothing. And because you remember that Swami Dayananda said a beautiful thing. He said, the way to invite Ishvara into your life is by being aware of him. Now, what he meant by him, be aware of the presence of the given, the living presence of the given. So therefore, I'm with God. When I'm agitated, that's the living presence of the given, aren't I? If I just accept that fact, that's where I encounter God exactly where I am. Does that make sense?
Very beautiful. Yes, that's true.
All right.
Very beautiful. Thank you so much, BG. So one last thing. What do you have next for us?
I think what's an extremely important thing, which is what you're dealing with, is what we'll talk about next time, is he made this beautiful distinction between me as personality, which has been formed in me by past events and causes, and me as a simple conscious person. And me as a simple conscious person comes from me being filled with the presence of reality. Me being a personality comes from complete domination and being determined by the past. There's no freedom there. So what we'll do next time is we'll go through the distinction so that we learn to recognize when we're in one, so we can shift to the other.
Wonderful. And I also have a couple of topic suggestions. So
yes.
It would be very helpful for us to see the flaws or the shortcomings in the present models of psychology we have, whether it's Freudian psychology, Jungian psychology. We have various personality tests, the MBTI, the 5 big personality traits, all of these things which have become a pop cultural artifact. It would be nice to have your take on those in the light of...
yes, because that, see, Vedic psychology as unfolded by Dayananda is truly extraordinary. Now, because I see him as a genius, I do. I don't care what anyone says. He was an outstanding, I know he's a Hindu monk and stuff, but as a psychological thinker, no one ever... When you look at human beings as objects of psychological or technological or quantitative measurement, you're not dealing with the spiritual aspect of man at all. You're reducing him as an object.
Right.
So when we talk about the science of psychology in the West, right, they're really big on treating human beings as not as a person but as an object. And I think that's a form of violence, actually. So I don't like that. Also, you notice how for Swami Dayananda, it's all about coming into relationship with the world, a harmonious relationship with the world. So there's a way of being which is loving and caring.
Right.
That's what sanity is. So he doesn't have a psychological theory. He unfolds a way of seeing, which when that becomes a way of being, we're lifted out of all of this psychological misery. So he doesn't have, he's a little bit, he's different, you see, he's different. But I definitely will go into maybe the difference between, say, Freudian psychology, cognitive psychology that they normally do, the different forms of counseling. We can go into that.
Right. You could just give us a walkthrough of the history of Western psychology and a critique along the way.
That'd be an interesting subject to talk about, because you see, you Indians have no idea how wonderful your Vedic psychology is. I don't think you guys do.
Most people
and I'm so glad to be able to talk to you about this, because I'm obsessed with it. But the fact of the matter is that I think Swami Dayananda's psychology needs to be given more attention.
I think so, definitely. So, thank you so much for actually doing that for us, because I think to have somebody who's outside of the tradition being one of the biggest proponents of the tradition is most gratifying, and definitely feels good to be able to connect with somebody who understands our common shared teacher so well. And I would also like to mention that a lot of people have shared extremely positive feedback about these conversations that I'm having with you, and you have a lot of admirers all over the world. So keep up the good work, and I'm looking forward to many more conversations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaste. Hari Om.
Bye-bye.
Bye.